come once again to discuss things.
And that's the thing that I'm not really worried about us not getting an hour out of it because existentialism. We'll get an hour out of just trying to explain the damn word. Hi everyone, welcome to this week's episode of Geeky Gentlemen. I am Sid Pardue. Joining me today is the one, the only superhero enthusiast. Yay, all aliases tonight.
Hey.
So Alex is joining us because I surprise invited him to this week's show last week. And he got to pick... Yeah. Haha, it was too late. You couldn't refuse on air. Because then you'd seem like a jerk. So anyway,
but
so
don't you know
Alex
I have radical freedom?
Yeah, true. So what are we discussing then tonight, Alex?
Existentialism, and I guess just how easily a person can change their projects. Do you have radical freedom?
Yeah, and so there's a lot in this. Steve was originally meant to be here, but he couldn't because something came up with school. Well, he could have, but he decided not to. That's going to be the running joke here. If it wasn't funny that time, don't worry. We'll keep saying it until it becomes hilarious.
Eventually, one of these times.
Yeah. So I honestly do think it's a good thing to have maybe a smaller group here, though, and not have someone else who knows like an entirely different branch and experience of the thing. So what we'll try to do is start out really, really basic for people who aren't familiar with philosophy and existentialism, and just generally we'll try to give quick aside explanations of whatever we're going to reference or something, because otherwise, who's going to watch this video? Steve. That's it. People are even like, existentialism, was that like a weird sci-fi movie or something?
I think so. Didn't a guy turn into like an animal?
Alright, so just really, really broadly, starting out, what is existentialism? It's a branch of philosophy, but what specifically does it deal with?
I mean, essentially kind of the concept of human freedom.
Mm-hmm.
But it's really sort of, I guess, rooted in not so much, like metaphysics, but in phenomenology, in the realm of human experience, which is kind of the realm we all find ourselves in.
Believe it or not, for some odd reason. And yeah, it's one of those interesting things. What I really like about philosophy, and actually it's funny, or not just philosophy, but existentialism, is it kind of started out as an insult. Like the word existentialist, it took me forever to remember who was like the stories of philosophy of like these things that you cannot possibly account for. But apparently, Hegel, who is this big 19th century philosopher, and everyone was just under the impression that he finished philosophy, which is just adorable. Everyone was under the impression that Hegel finished philosophy, and one of his contemporaries, one of his rivals named Schopenhauer, he really, really didn't like the guy, and there are varying accounts as to why, but he was giving the story goes that he was giving a lecture after Hegel's death because now Hegel couldn't fight back, and he said that the problem with Hegel is that all of his philosophy exists outside of himself. And that's kind of where the word starts to come from. And so calling someone an existentialist up until the 40s was kind of equivalent to calling someone a solipsist or a nihilist. There's just, at that, you can't really argue for those positions without it being kind of self-defeating, and people were seeing existentialism in very much the same way. It's just, oh, well, you're just you're just completely outside of yourself. You don't even know what you're grasping at anymore. It's too abstract. There's no sense to it. Was the idea, and then Sartre comes around in the 40s, and he really does. He takes the word back, and it's awesome. So, I mean, there are proto-existentialists, like Nietzsche often gets classified that way.
Yeah. Do you group Kierkegaard in with the existentialists proper?
Yeah, I think so. I haven't read much of his stuff, but from the little bit I have seen, I think so.
I haven't read much Kierkegaard since high school. God, that was a long time ago. I remember quite liking it. But of course, he's kind of coming at it from a religious perspective, which is a little bit interesting. And I think of more existentialism proper really being Sartre and Beauvoir in France in the middle of the 20th century. And because that it's such a nebulous category itself, like existentialism, like who counts? Like Kierkegaard, kind of, Nietzsche, kind of, okay, Sartre, Beauvoir, Camus, not really.
Yeah, it's one of those things where like people were trying to distance themselves from it because, like I said, it was an insult, and so like you really have to wait until the 40s. Yeah, 46 was Existentialism as a Humanism, if I'm remembering correctly.
I think it was after the war.
Yeah, I know it was definitely after the war, and part of the reason it was written was the whole Nuremberg trials were starting up, and all these fucking Nazis are like, oh, well, I was just following orders. I didn't have a choice, and Sartre had to come around and slap him in the face.
Yeah. It gets at philosophy as an attempt to solve problems. What was the problem? How do we morally argue against that position? Like this horrible thing that just happened that affected, we call it a world war. It affected everything.
Certainly, and so Sartre writes Existentialism as a Humanism, and he just like becomes this rock star of philosophy. Even though Sartre's stuff, like I love the man to death, but it's always very flawed, particularly when he gets to his metaphysics. It tends to start to break down. And I think part of that might be because I feel like Sartre tried to be the cool Heidegger that everyone could actually like. I think he just really
Heidegger.
Yeah, like I feel like he just really tried to adapt Heidegger's things into not being a self-important asshole. But he just doesn't have the same gift for really deeply understanding the kind of stuff Heidegger did. And don't get me wrong, Heidegger, terrible person. I love my copy of The Principle of Reason because it has a picture of Heidegger's face on it, and so whenever I'm getting frustrated, I can just punch it. It's a great way to read that book. But yeah, so like Heidegger, for those that don't know, was a German philosopher, early 19th century, and this is the one thing you need to know about Heidegger before you learn anything else about Heidegger. He was a Nazi, and I don't say that as a joke or like say he was a really strict person. He was legitimately a Nazi. You can see video of Heidegger encouraging German students to go join the Hitler Youth, because that was the right German thing to do. He was fully part of the entire Nazi movement, and there's reports that he, turned people over to the Nazis. And then he never repented or apologized for this. He later described the concentration camps as just another thing that happens in war. He acted like it was over exaggerated. Just the worst kind of person in the world. But still a genius. Problematically. Yeah. It's one of those things. It's like you really don't want him to be right, but if Hitler says 2 + 2 = 4, and I'm not going all Descartes on his ass, I can't disagree with that at a certain point. And so I really don't like Heidegger as a human being, but when he does when he says stuff that's right, I can't really argue with him on certain sides of it. I think he's still very long-winded for no damn reason. Yeah, but so Heidegger's this like big, shocking force in postmodernism from which existentialism is kind of an offshoot. And so Sartre, I feel like he was always trying to capture that same thing that Heidegger was doing. That's why he wrote, being and nothingness as opposed to being in time. And that's what I've always felt about Sartre. Is like I really, really like the guy. He's a really cool dude. I feel like his metaphysics tend to be really, really problematic at times.
It's admittedly been some time since I really delved into the deep end on that side of things. I've always gravitated more towards Simone de Beauvoir. Just because I think, and as far as this relates to the topic, she's a far more nuanced version of kind of, frankly, reality. and experience, and how difficult it can be to change projects. I mean, we use the term project, I guess, in the sense of really a person's life is directed by what they've committed themselves to. And so, we can commit ourselves to various projects, and Sartre's idea of radical freedom is, there's not really anything that's holding you back from, completely changing your entire worldview.
It's interesting because, I say I have problems with Sartre's metaphysics, but his metaphors are often damn perfect. And that's why it's interesting that he went off and started writing plays and stuff as well.
Yeah.
Because the way Sartre described radical freedom, that just instantly attracted me to it and made me go, oh, I've done this before I'd ever read Sartre or heard the word existentialism. So imagine you're holding in your hands, we'll go with a less gruesome version. Imagine you're holding in your hands a copy of Action Comics #1, right? And it's a fairly good condition copy. You would naturally feel a little bit of anxiety that somehow you're going to drop or bend or ruin this, pristine copy of this important historical geekdom thing, right? There'd be some part of that kind of crawling in the back of your mind.
For sure.
Yeah, but the thing is, logically, you've held things that are more delicate, heavier, less likely to just bend in the middle of your hand without incident countless times in your past, and you've never broken them, and if you have, it's like there's a clear ratio, there's a clear balance where the number of times you've held delicate things and not broken them is much higher than the number of times you've broken them. So, logically, there's no reason for you to fear that, but Sartre would go, oh no, the reason you feel fear is because no one could stop you from doing it. Once you have that in your hands, and the example Sartre used was holding a baby over a cliff, and no one could stop you from dropping it, which, like I said, less gruesome example. Nothing could just stop you from crumpling up or ripping in half a copy of Action Comics #1 if you were holding it in your hands.
That's true.
But there's just that part of you is like, oh my god, I could do this. So, Sartre kind of brings that realization in.
You're committed to the project of the preservation of history.
Yeah, and so you could clearly just go off and do whatever the hell else you want, but something in you is holding you back, and you realize it's your ability to choose. So you could choose to do something, and it can be radical. You are that completely free, and that is terrifying.
Yeah. It opens up, sort of an infinite vista of possibilities. And that is terrifying, because what if we make the wrong choice?
And obviously, it's impossible to look at this paper that Sartre wrote without the context of the time of all these Nazis saying, well, I didn't have a choice, I was just following orders. And Sartre comes around and is like, no, you fucking did have a choice, and you chose to do this.
You could have resisted. There would have
Yeah,
been,
like,
and this is, I guess, where what I was getting at with Beauvoir, and then I think Merleau-Ponty made a lot of these kind of same remarks about how, okay, yeah, that's true, but your freedom is also restricted by, your biology, by the society in which you live, etc. So you're not totally free, and you have psychological baggage as well, so you can't necessarily completely change your projects. If I'm a smoker, I'm committed to smoking, and then I change that, I want to become smoke-free, I can radically choose to give up smoking, but that doesn't mean that I'm not going to have horrible withdrawal symptoms tomorrow and want to smoke like crazy.
Yeah, it's funny. I was tweeting all last night about this existentialism comic strip I found, and it's amazing. I've read through like 99% of it now. And there was an example where the guy talks about, smoking, and it gets really, really existential. He's like, no, your problem isn't that you don't have the will to not smoke. The problem is that your will is so strong that you are breaking your self-imposed, restrictions. Because you, in the past, laid this restriction on your future self that you're going to do this. And so your future self, however, isn't obedient to that. So your lack of ability to not smoke isn't a lack of free will. It's actually it's a lack of obedience. That's a really, really fascinating idea. And so, like, the idea of
I feel like future me is holding present me hostage.
It certainly feels that way. I mean, like, future Ian is such an asshole. He always tries to tell you what to do. And I'm all like, you can't tell me what to do. You're not my dad. And then past Ian's a total dick. He won't listen to anything. He's all like, you can't tell me what to do. You're not my dad. So, no, but just the idea of how you're still limited by biology. Like, we'll get into here in a minute. I feel like it'll be a good place to transition into whether or not free will is a thing. Because there's all kinds of weird scientific arguments against it, and I just don't understand them. But just the idea of being limited by biology, by your circumstances, sure, but there's nothing to stop you from changing those, at least in the immediate. Maybe you can't make that change long term, but, if I'm, I don't know, itching my armpit and someone tells me, hey, please stop doing that, I can make the choice to stop doing that. It doesn't necessarily get rid of my itch of my armpits. I'll still have that physical desire to do that, but I can stop for, considerations of other people or whatever. Not the best example, but I don't know, I'm pulling at strings here.
I get what you mean.
Yeah. Okay, so let's quickly get into... is free will then a thing or not?
I guess we have unfree will.
All right, expand on that, because that's a new one.
Will which is limited. I mean, my ability to act within the world is limited. My willpower itself is limited.
And Sartre made a point that you have free will, but you don't have absolute power. So, like, you can choose to go flying and do so by jumping out the window and fly, but you don't have absolute power to make that a reality. You can still choose to attempt it, but you can't enforce your will upon reality beyond that. So yeah, I guess I'd agree with that. I wouldn't say that there's absolute perfect free will. I think that's kind of ridiculous, and I don't see any point in arguing for that. But at the same time, I think it's just as foolish to go to the opposite spectrum, which is to say that free will is an illusion. And that's something I hear, particularly people in the scientific community, spouting off. And I do not understand the concept of that argument. I think it might be just a fundamental difference of terms, but I don't know.
Well, I mean, scientifically, we don't live in a mechanical universe. Quantum physics. we, I guess, live in a universe which is probabilistic.
Mm-hmm.
What the ultimate philosophical implications of all of this is, I'm not sure. Because I'm not even sure, the physicists who work with this stuff really fully understand it.
Yeah, and like, I'm not even getting into the quantum of it. The one I always hear, the argument I always hear against free will is mainly psychological.
You mean like the idea that your brain kind of makes up its mind before you consciously do?
Yeah, because like I often hear that example, think of a celebrity, why didn't you think of Ricky Gervais? Well, you can't account for that, so therefore you don't have free will. And I'm like, well, maybe with very small things, but what about when you change your mind? Or what if when someone makes, proposes a task to you like that, you can't think of anything? I mean, has someone ever asked you, what do you want for dinner, and you just don't know? Like, I mean, it's a really easy counter argument, but it gets thrown around like, oh, well, your psychology, it's all been building up to this for, decades of your life or whatever, so you have no control of your decisions. They're made instance before you can even consciously conceive of them. I'm like, yeah, but I can still override that. I can go to the pantry and go, ooh, I want those Cheez-Its, and then look down and go, oh, wait, no, fuck that, Oreos.
Yeah, there are multiple competing impulses.
Certainly. So you're picking between them, and to decide, or to blatantly say that because your brain makes a decision in an instant means you don't have any free will. I don't know, I find that really strange, because there are all kinds of involuntary physical things that we can at least temporarily suspend. You have no choice. You have to breathe, but you can hold your breath, and you can even mess up. I was talking to Steve about this a couple months ago, actually. You can actually kind of interrupt your brain's natural ability to breathe, and so listeners at home, please try this little thought experiment with me. Pay attention to whether or not you're breathing in or breathing out at this moment. Really consider it, and then force yourself to do the opposite. And just force yourself to think about the process of breathing in and out. And if you do that for not too long, just long enough, and then try to go to something else, you realize you're not breathing in a normal rhythm anymore. You have to now remind yourself to breathe for a couple minutes before your brain takes back over. It's something I stumbled onto when I was in high school, and it really freaked me out, because I was like, wait, why can't I breathe now?
There are all sorts of weird tricks that you can play on your body.
Mm-hmm. So it's just stuff like that. I'm like, just the physical arguments, not even getting into quantum physics, because
Who the fuck
I don't know,
knows
that
what any
model,
of that's about?
That model of the universe just seems like so in its infancy that I don't even really consider a lot of that stuff to be full-on science yet. It's just really good speculation.
Well, yeah, a lot of, string theory, M theory, whatever you want to call it, or whatever it is now, is not testable.
Yeah, so there's no reason to acknowledge that as if it is fact. It's the only model for what our observable things are now, but the fact of the matter
it stays because it more or less works.
Yeah, and the thing is, though, when you look at the history of science, I mean, my favorite go-to example is there were models of the solar system with an Earth-based center that worked perfectly. It was still wrong. And so that's kind of where I go to with certain, when you get to really far out there scientific theory. I'm like, you can fudge stuff enough, because math is not absolute. You can fudge numbers any way you want to. You can fudge stuff enough to make it work if you're dedicated enough. So just because it works, just because it happens to fit, doesn't mean it's correct. That's kind of the whole point of scientific theory.
And there are competing theories too, as far as string theory is concerned, like loop quantum gravity, which doesn't require you to posit 11 dimensions of space-time.
Right.
But as far as, I guess, getting back to the concept of free will, I think it maybe needs to be understood as just the ability to change your projects as you wish.
Yeah, because like I do not believe in absolute free will. I think that's ridiculous. Your brain isn't that good.
I'm not Q from Star Trek.
Yeah, not even connected to absolute power. Just your brain isn't that good at multitasking. It just is able to rapidly switch between things. So, you make free will decisions, but a lot of the time you're just kind of like on autopilot. I guess a metaphor I like to use. You're just kind of on autopilot, but you can always step in and at least temporarily interrupt some of those decisions. I don't know, the majority of those that are not directly related to your body.
This is where we get into territory of why I'm a Buddhist.
Please take us away then.
Well, I mean, as far as cycles and disrupting them, I mean, that's what it's all about. In particular, Buddhism is kind of focused on, like other wisdom traditions, on, I mean, I guess you could say queering perception, or kind of dissolving that false sense of a center point. That is, like, you learn to concentrate really well and you develop really refined states of mind. You can sort of observe how your own perception works, and eventually you can deconstruct your own perception. The tradition that I practice in, we just do noting practice, so that's essentially you just label shit. You put a little, mental label on it. Oh, that's, anger arising, and if we have very, very in-depth descriptions of things and how they come in, how phenomena arise and pass away within your field of perception and stuff. And so you can...
so kind of like the, forgive me for using a strange example, kind of like the Mind Palace memory trick. Is that like a good thing to connect it to?
Well, that's more for memorizing things.
No, but just as far as identifying different emotions and stuff that you're feeling at different times. Like just being able to recognize it and tap into it whenever you need to, or just be able to be aware of what's coming up.
Well, the point of the practice is to disrupt all these sort of processes of, I mean, we would call self. This sort of idea that I'm this little homunculus that's looking out at the world like 2 inches behind, right between your eyes. You do these practices for long enough. And I mean, the whole Western philosophical tradition is based on this. Like, the forms are not just bad metaphysics. Contemplating the forms is the contemplative practice of the Greek rationalists. But, whatever. The point is, Beauvoir has this kind of concept of sedimentation. We have this concept of karma, of kind of you mentioned autopilot, and actions which you do completely out of habit are not karmic actions. It's only actions which you do consciously. So things which bring you towards awakening are considered skillful, and that develops good karma. It's basically like what builds good habits and what builds bad habits. And as far as that relates to this, it can be a way to help you see the cycle that you're in and break out of it. Because changing your projects, isn't as easy as just, radical freedom, I can believe whatever I want. We're conditioned by society. We have material constraints, biological constraints, psychological constraints. We live in a complicated world, but it is doable.
Yeah, you can always change it if you're willing to put the effort into it. It's just a matter of if you're willing to put the effort into it. And, like, because there's that knee-jerk reaction if someone tells you, oh, well, society has programmed you to think that way. And you're like, no, I'm not programmed, because no one wants to think of themselves as brainwashed. But if you're willing to...
I take it as a general assumption. That's, like, I really try and question kind of everything. Like, you gotta think, like, well, where did this idea in my head come from?
And it is one of those things, like, it's a knee-jerk reaction to think that you are not, because, you've been told that it's not good to be brainwashed, so you don't want to imagine yourself that way. And then you have to, but if you're willing to just step back for a sec, not take offense to it, and just consider, okay, if I was, what would be the circumstances, and how would I know whether or not? And so it's just a matter of exploring the way your mind is internally structured at that point. And that is very much at the heart of existentialism, because it's about, living authentically. It's about having real experiences and not letting yourself just drift into kind of an autopilot life. Back to Heidegger, he really was anti-technology because he felt that it alienated you from yourself. It distracted you from the phenomenal world and kept you away from it. And he was afraid of people kind of becoming like basically cyborgs that were extensions of their credit cards and televisions. And that never happened, thank God. Right?
Exactly.
See what I mean? You don't like the guy, but then he turns out to be right about things. And it's really aggravating. Man. No, but that is one of the major tenets of the whole idea of existentialism. And I was talking to Jackass at work today, and he's like, "So what is existentialist philosophy?" I'm like, it's not really a branch of philosophy on its own. It's just something you kind of get over. It's just a problem that you have to confront. You experience an existential crisis. You don't become an existentialist. And I feel like people that Sartre kind of says it knowingly, but I don't feel like existentialism on its own is a branch. You can't be
something that you identify as.
Yeah, you can't be an existentialist in the same way that you can be, a Hegelian or whatever.
Or a Marxist, or, any, really.
Yeah, you can be.
It's kind of like saying, I'm an ontologist. It's like, okay, but what is your metaphysics?
Yeah, I can definitely say that I'm generally I tend to avoid labels because I feel like they come with baggage. See what I did there? Because okay. No, generally I tend to avoid labels, but I do really, really closely identify with phenomenology. It's something that I'm just surprisingly good at, and I have no idea why. I'm just really able to get it.
You experience, that's why.
Yeah, that's probably it. No, I really do identify with phenomenology, but I mentioned this kind of briefly earlier. In high school, I was experiencing and considering existential paradoxes, existential crises, and just existential thinking without knowing what any of it was. I wrote this probably really bad, I haven't gone back to it in a number of years, but probably bad novel in high school, in which all it was about was the main character deciding his own fate. And he's given literally every opportunity to do the quote-unquote right thing, to turn his life around, do the right thing, and he continually chooses to stay on the path he's on because that's his choice. There's a moment where he is at a crossroads, and he can either go down one road, which has a nice, beautiful sunset on the end of it, and then the other side of the road has this dark, dreary, ominous-looking sky. And he takes out a coin and goes, okay, heads, sunset, tails, dark, dreary thing. And he flips the coin, it lands on heads, and he goes down the tails path anyway. So it's just everything about that was wholly about just existential choice, and I had no idea about it. So I've always really, really closely identified with existential thinking, though. So I don't feel like existentialism, though, is a branch of philosophy so much as it is a thing in which you confront in philosophy.
Yeah, at some point you have to confront the fact that you are a being that exists and experiences. Mm-hmm. And especially the new atheists that seem to totally reject that idea.
And I don't get that. like there's this weird turn toward like this materialism thing. It's like, oh well, you're not really a thinking thing. You're
well, it's
like,
not even like a materialism. It's like a reductionism.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
What's the one I heard? Free will is an illusion created by the mind because it is an evolutionary advantage. And in the same way that the liver is a very complex organ, so is the mind, and it creates the illusion of free will, but your thoughts or your actions are already predetermined. And I'm like, no, that's just, you're blending so many weird things of science that are like really, really out there ideas as is, and accepting them all as perfect fact at that point. And that's really, really foolish.
But even that account doesn't account for, experience itself. I mean, all they're doing is just saying, okay, it evolved. Yeah, well, no shit.
Right.
That doesn't tell us anything about the quality of experience or how to live in the world.
Yeah, it's like this weird idea that since we're only physical beings, we can't have, and I accept that. I'm not religious. I'm an atheist. I do think we are, bags of chemicals and electrical impulses. But that doesn't mean that my actions are predetermined. Like, you can, if you strap someone into a chair and, pump dopamine into their brain and then force them to watch their family being murdered or something, they're not going to call it a pleasant experience by the time the dopamine wears off, just because they were physically experiencing happiness at the time. It's actually going to probably make happiness awful for them if they ever experience it again. So you're not fully physical. There's this continuity of self that carries on throughout time, because you're not the fucking atoms you're made up of. Those replenish. You're not the cells. Those replenish and replace themselves. And the memories aren't just like held in one cell and then passed on as they die. That's not how it actually works. You're this concept of self that continues on past the physical.
There's processes of self which we reify.
Yeah, that sounds smart. And so, like, just this idea that, oh, well, since there's a soul, we can't have all these other metaphysical ideas. I'm like, no, you are what you are, whether or not you believe in a soul or you believe you're a physical thing. You just are that. Your free will exists regardless of either option. Either you are a soul that controls a physical body, or you're a physical body that has free will. It's the same thing. You're not changing anything at that point. You're just removing an extraneous detail.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know, do you think we're getting too out there, or does this all seem relatively comprehensible to people?
I'm totally not the best gauge.
Right? I guess the fact that I have to ask that question is probably a no.
Yeah, that's maybe fair. I mean, if we want to bring it a little bit back down to earth as far as existentialism being practical, like we mentioned, the fact that, you do exist and experience things is something you have to face at some point, so it's relevant for that. I find when going through life situations where, change is necessary and I need to make big decisions, reacquainting myself with this stuff can be beneficial. If even just for the simple sake of reminding myself of what's possible.
Yeah. Because there is a tendency to just, like we were saying earlier, go into autopilot when you're making decisions. Not to think about a decision,
what would be the most sensible thing to do and not what's possible.
Yeah.
And what do I want?
And it's really easy to just go along with things as opposed to actively participating in your life. What's all right? So this, I can't believe it, man. But do you think Click is a really good existential film?
I've never seen it. I've only seen the trailers.
Okay, well, all right. So the remote, like so you know the general concept,
Yeah.
the remote that allows him to control reality of his life.
What we've always all wanted.
Yes. So we can turn ourselves into the Hulk by adjusting the hue settings.
That's clearly
silly
what I'm going for.
Yeah. So, like, there's this plot device in the film that the remote picks up on how it's being used. It has kind of like an artificial intelligence, and then adjusts itself to the whims of the user. So, like, it'll start to do things automatically for you. And so, like, he fast forwards through work and he fast forwards through family dinners because he really doesn't want to be there doing it. And he doesn't want to be, actively participating in the thing because, family dinners are high stress, work is fucking boring, and just, spending time with the family can get a little tedious because he has young kids. So the remote picks up on that and starts fast forwarding through those parts of his life. And suddenly he's an old man. He's like, "Oh my God, my entire life has passed me by, and I've just let myself make the wrong kinds of decisions for the sake that it was easier or whatever." I'm like, wow, that's, the more I think about that film, I can't believe it, but an Adam Sandler film may be one of the most intriguing existential films of all time.
Did he write that one?
What?
Did he write that one?
I don't know. I doubt it. He probably wrote some of the jokes, but that seems a little too smart for him. It's probably one of his best movies, if not his best.
Interesting. I might actually see it now.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. There's still some stupid jokes, but some of them are, if you had a remote that can stop time, and you'd kick somebody in the balls. You can't deny yourself that.
Bad
so there's
people.
there's some immature things. I'd go find Donald Trump right in the middle of a speech.
Just shave his head.
Well, you just have to take off the little tribble he wears around.
Yeah.
So no, there's some like immature stuff in it, but no, like really, when you think about that film, it is totally about existentialism, and it's really, really shocking that Adam Sandler made a really competent film about existentialism. I can't believe those words are leaving my mouth, but they have.
The things you will only hear on Geeky Gentlemen.
Yeah, that's your new task, Alex. You have to live tweet Click. You have to go watch it and live tweet. Because I'm really curious if I'm just reading way too much into it, or if there's legitimately something there.
We'll have to see.
Yeah, so... Wait, shit, how did we get to Click? Oh, we're talking about autopilot life. No, so that's part of what existentialism existentialism encourages you to do one of two things. Either kill yourself or take a more active participatory role in your life.
Mm-hmm.
Because either you just accept that you're an individual and there's not like much you can do about that, or you just, kind of lean back and let it go. So I guess instead of kill yourself, you can just sit there and wait to die. Is the other way to look at it.
Yeah.
And that just sounds like a waste of effort. So you might as well at least attempt to take an active role in your life, because if that's your only other alternative, what's the harm in trying?
Mm-hmm.
Which, I don't know, existentialism can lead to... It sounds like it's going to be really negative, and Sartre did kind of at times sell it and make it sound really, really oppressive, but he was just trying to make people aware of the weight. He has that fantastic line that I do love to death. Man is condemned to be free, because once thrown into the world, he is responsible for everything he does. And like you said, there's
really where you start to see like the Nietzsche influence on the existentialists, because that was the whole thrust of the eternal recurrence.
Mm-hmm.
is, imagine every decision you made had the ultimate weight, that, you would have to relive that decision over and over again for eternity. You want to make damn sure that that's the best decision that you could possibly make.
So Burger King or McDonald's for breakfast? And it is one of those things, because you have this tendency, and I mean, I even have this. You have this tendency to do what's easy just because you don't want to, you don't want to upset someone, so you're not going to speak up at the family dinner. You don't want to, make your boss angry, so you won't tell them that they're wrong about something. But then when you're kind of faced with that notion of, oh, well, you're always going to be kind of, silencing yourself around these people, or you're always going to be just accepting the lower road just because it's the easy thing to do, and are you really comfortable with living in that way for eternity? That's a really, really oppressive thing, and it adds just this tremendous weight to everything you do. Not to say that there still can't be trivial things, but it makes a lot of things much less trivial.
Yeah, it's like, I guess I can live with having the chicken salad for lunch. We kind of touched on the differences sort of between the different existentialists, I guess, particularly between Sartre and Beauvoir, about how easily you can change your projects. I think it's sort of interesting in how, and this sort of connects with Camus as well, as far as how that difference, I think, is also reflected in their politics. And I can sort of see why Sartre would try and hold kind of the position that he does, just sort of for political reasons, of radical freedom is this kind of, it's a revolutionary break from what came before. That's a important thing. You start to get into ideas of sedimentation, it starts to sound like reform. Camus eventually got to a place where, he didn't really think violence was acceptable to enforce kind of rules on other people and restrictions on other people. So he was anti-revolutionary.
Yeah, and they had like a huge falling out over the news that came out of the Soviet Union. They got they had this huge falling out because they used to kind of be like the best of friends, and then Sartre wanted to still stick up for him and everything, go, oh, well, this is an exaggerated circumstance, and Camus really wanted to distance the hell out of himself from that.
I would have to look it up. I think that was, over the stuff in Hungary. And, I mean, if that's the case, well, that was pretty much the sign of a Soviet split. That was really where the left fractured. Is over that, is, there's sort of the portrayal of what happened in Hungary being sort of they're fighting for more democracy, and the Soviets come in and crush it. And that's not totally the case. It's not that simple. But that was sort of the narrative, and you had a lot of people on the left who became very anti-Soviet Union after that. And I think Camus was one of those people. Certainly there's a lot of stuff that went on in his home country of Algeria as well. Yeah.
And Sartre wanted to, stick with that, try to look past the flaws and kind of, he kind of became an apologist in a lot of ways. And, not getting into the whole historical politics side of it all, that does show that he was really, there's always the philosophical side of what Sartre was doing, but there is kind of a historical political undertext to a lot of it as well. Which I think might be one of the reasons why some of his stuff kind of gets a little rocky at times.
Yeah, I just sort of like to focus on the more practical side of it, because, I mean, you get the whole philosophy, what is it good for thing, but I mean, you start talking about existentialism, well, you get that in spades.
Yeah, totally.
And it's like, no, this was invented to solve problems, and it did it.
Yeah, it actually brought up a lot of issues. It forces people to confront things in a rational way because Sartre also had that great line: "Politics is a science. You can prove that you are right and others are wrong."
That's Marx.
Is it? Oh, I could have sworn that it was.
Well, I mean,
Man,
they were. I mean, the existentialists were communists. But I mean, Marxism. Another name for it is scientific socialism, is because it was a break from earlier utopian visions of socialism, and Marx was like, no, let's science this shit up. Let's look at things materially.
yeah.
And so you can actually prove things about politics. It's not just, well, this is my opinion and these are my values.
Yeah, and so they're adding logical philosophical arguments into what they're doing with social progress.
Like people say philosophy is useless, and we fucking solved politics.
Well, we tried, and then
Well, I mean, like, people have been trying to do that since the beginning. I mean, the Republic, right?
Right. Oh man, like I feel like the kind of breaking from just existentialism on the whole and just kind of talking about philosophy in general. I think the biggest problem with philosophy as a field of study is everyone keeps trying to finish it, and you can't continually study something that everyone is setting out to finish. Because like every generation seems to have that philosopher where people go, oh, well, he's the guy that really finished philosophy when you think about it. Hegel made that claim. Just everyone fucking does that. I'm like, guys, just you're adding. Don't act like you're finishing it. I promise you're not.
Yeah.
Someone's gonna disagree with you.
Reality is bigger than just what one person can think.
Yeah, and so I do find that with like. I do understand kind of a public frustration with philosophy and how people feel alienated from it, and I can never remember her name, and I always feel terrible. One of Heidegger's students feared that philosophy would turn into all of Heidegger's work, and you can certainly imagine her frustration, studying directly under Heidegger. You just imagine how the man talked. You've already seen how he wrote. Study under Heidegger, like she was afraid that all of philosophy would turn into that, where just no one who hasn't studied this for years and isn't willing to sit down in a room alone and just completely isolate themselves with a text will ever be able to comprehend what is being written down. She was really afraid that would be all of what philosophy would be, and so she really encouraged philosophers to embrace the novel. To tell stories in order to explain their philosophy. And when you look back at the beginning of it all, that's what fucking Plato was doing.
Yeah. Well, that's what people have always done. I mean, that's the most effective way to communicate information is with a narrative. Even you look at, like, fucking TED Talks. Look at how the people do them. They start with an anecdote and they build from it and they tell a story.
Totally.
It fucking works. This and I mean hashtag. I think that's hashtag it fucking works. But I think that's interesting as far as it relates to existentialism because they pretty much all wrote novels.
Yeah, Sartre's big famous play No Exit, and it's not the best from like a narrative review standpoint. It's not the best thing ever. I've gotten to read the text. I've never gotten to see it in person, so I don't know. Maybe people can sell it better. I saw a short film based on it, though. Kind of worked a little, like, I don't know if it was maybe a little too comedic, but it almost worked a little bit better on film because at one point someone tries to leave the room and then there's, like, a closet behind him and he just comes in through that door. So maybe that's too comical, but there's something, like, pretty clever about that. I don't know. I guess you could do that on stage with twins if you tried really hard. Okay, sorry.
It's like the Prestige now.
Yeah, I know. I just kind of got away from myself. But no, like Sartre's writing. Like I remember taking a theater class, and the book, like the textbook, mentioned No Exit at one point because they're talking about character acting and character, like building a history for your character and all that stuff. And it said, if you're doing a play like No Exit, don't even fucking bother, because the characters are just little, soapboxes. Like there's no real, there's not a huge ton of character there, and you can't really put much into it. They're there to make the points for the author. And so that's a really interesting perspective on it too, is, can you tell a good quality narrative and at the same time preach or teach philosophy, rather?
I think
because even going back to the dialogues with Plato, at times, Socrates, whether or not he exists, makes some good points, but it is kind of just reading lectures at some point.
The Buddha's the same way, it's a dialogue, but it's pretty one-sided.
Yeah. People are kind of there to just fulfill roles, and I don't know, I think you can still do that, because one of my favorite films, Dark Knight, I feel excellently communicates philosophical ideas and is damned strong from a narrative side of things.
I mean, there's plenty of great fiction that's handled philosophical problems well.
Mm-hmm.
Star Trek episodes, even.
Certainly. I got a little... I just finished watching Voyager for everyone, and as interesting as, all those episodes were, I got really tired of the fact that Janeway would never concede on, okay, machines can fucking think, until, the last... they kept doing that same thing where the Holodoctor would be like, he's a machine, he has rights. Just like, he's a machine, he doesn't have rights. And then, at the end, the Holodoctor would be right, but then we'd, 3 or 4 episodes later, we'd go through the same shit. That got really old, but otherwise it was all still really interesting. And she eventually does come around when the Doctor's having his artistic freedoms infringed upon, so it all worked out in the end. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff that I feel handles it well. So it certainly is a line, though, because people will accuse Star Trek of being too preachy.
And it definitely crosses that line. It's all about, whether or not it's well written.
Yeah, and so, my favorite episodes of Star Trek are when they actually give the other side a chance to talk back and actually present itself.
Yeah.
Because that's, I think, the biggest problem I have with it is it's well-intentioned, but often it's too cheesy for me to, swallow the message. Because, that's probably the problem, half the episodes of TOS is, well, God says this philosophy is okay, so you should listen, America. Or humanity, rather. That was pretty much, half of those episodes is God's okay with this. But yeah, there's obviously that line of don't become too preachy, and people even accuse Dark Knight of being too preachy, and I disagree, but whatever. I think those people just aren't interested in philosophy and just want to see explosions.
Yeah, I wouldn't characterize that movie as too preachy. I mean, you can disagree with what its values are, but I wouldn't say that it's preachy.
Yeah, Doug Walker kind of makes that point of oh well, the characters shouldn't be the one having these conversations, we should. I'm perfectly okay with people,
questioning what they're doing.
Yeah, just really thinking about and having conversations about whatever they're going through.
Examining the potential consequences of their actions.
Yeah,
doing things that moral beings in the universe do.
That, to be fair, that quote is from the same video where he ultimately comes down that Batman 89 is better than Dark Knight. So, I think he's got a bias on that film, and he'll never really acknowledge it. Yeah, I know.
And by disagree, I mean he's wrong.
Yeah, the Burton Batman films are the one thing, I don't think he'll ever be able to look at without nostalgia glasses. And I don't know, I certainly enjoy those films for what they are, but they're not great. Anyway. Okay, so the idea of existentialism and just philosophy on the whole influencing having a greater influence as narrative.
Do you think that narrative's the most accessible way to get people into philosophy, or do you think a lot of these new media things like YouTube channels which explain things in kind of layman's terms and, various accounts on Twitter which try and educate people and whatnot, do you think those do a better job or as good of a job, or...
I think narrative's the best door, and then those things can help string you along.
Okay. Yeah, I'd say that's fair.
Because, this is a movie that's reputation has unfortunately been squandered over the last couple of years because of, fucking men's rights guys, but Fight Club is one of my favorite movies of all time, and it is one of the things that actively got me thinking about what decisions I make, and this is back in middle school, what decisions I make, the quality of those decisions, whether or not I should be okay with that. And, people miss a lot of the point of that movie, which is that embracing this kind of super macho thing is just as destructive as buying into this corporate sellout kind of lifestyle.
Yeah, people don't get that Project Mayhem wasn't good.
Yeah, there's a happy medium between both extremes, trust me. And so, that's a movie that I really enjoyed, and that really got me thinking in very deep, very philosophical ways, once again, before I knew what those meant. So that helped me get in the door, and then when I was applying for college, and my college that I wanted to go to, I couldn't go to because of, financial reasons, yada yada. When that door closed for me and I was given the option of, a local school and stuff that didn't have the program I wanted but did have a philosophy program, I was like, I think I've got an interest in this, and my perception of what philosophy was when I was first signing up for that major as opposed to what it became by the time I finished my intro to philosophy class are very different things. But films like Fight Club did introduce me to that style of thinking, social commentary, philosophical thought, did introduce me to that style of thinking, so it opened the door to that for me, and it was over time that I accessed other things. So, to be fair, I didn't get into philosophy proper from other media besides narrative, so maybe I'm not the best person to answer that question, but I feel like you have to have a reason to seek those specific things that try to explain it in layman's terms out before you have an interest in philosophy. I feel like you have to have a narrative to open that door to you so that you're interested in the particulars of what that narrative is about.
Yeah, I could see how one could make that case. I sort of come at it from the perspective of, I guess I've always been interested in philosophy in the sense of I've always been interested in ethics. And that is how do you live in the world? And so, of course, that leads to all of philosophy because, it kind of matters what is, so you get ontology out of that. Well, then how do you know that what you know is true? Well, then you get epistemology. How do I deal with, my realm of experience? Well, you get phenomenology.
Well, let me ask this question, though. Which came first, your interest in ethics or Star Trek?
Interest in ethics.
Oh, wow, okay.
I didn't get into Star Trek until I was 13.
Okay. I was about to say, oh, well, see, you did get introduced by narrative, you just forgot.
Well, I'm sure, I fucking grew up with Batman, so...
True.
We're all exposed to things which do, ask questions about the world.
Yeah, but it's whether or not you become aware of that stuff first, though, right?
Yeah.
I can see kids watching films like Dark Knight, and they just don't get it yet. They don't get that there's some kind of wider context. They're just watching it because Batman is fighting the Joker.
Cognitively too, your ability to kind of understand abstract symbolic things doesn't really develop until a certain age.
Certainly.
So part of it too, and people age at different rates. People mature at different rates. So, some people it's when they're younger. Some people it's when they're in their teens. Some people not till they're in their 20s.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I don't know where to go now. Take us somewhere. We're getting so I knew it wouldn't be a problem to get an hour out of it, but now I'm just lost in the interesting thoughts. See, I was reading through that existential comics thing last night because I couldn't get to sleep at first. So I'm like, I'll go read something online about existentialism at 1 a.m. Because that's a good idea. And I stumbled onto the comics, and so I read a shit ton of the comics, which are just filled with fascinating fucking ideas. And then I made myself stop at about 2:30, and I was like, you know what? Now I'm going to have a head full of existentialism, and I'm not going to get to sleep till like 3 or 4 o'clock. And you know what, Alex? I did not get to sleep till like 3 or 4 o'clock. Philosophical induced insomnia. I do find that's when I make my best arguments, or what I conceive of my best arguments is when I'm just awake and all that shit is running through my head at 1,000,000 miles a second, and I'm creating arguments and counter arguments and poking holes in my own arguments, and then finding ways to fix those and adjust my wording all in my head so that when I eventually make it on paper or in conversation, it's all pretty much done already. I'm just waiting for someone to give me the right opening to throw in there.
It's interesting how kind of necessity leads to you coming up with your best arguments of, I need to get to sleep right now. I can't handle all of this heavy life shit. Living authentically. The fuck does that mean?
Honestly, I feel like I could make millions if I just sold an instant sleep injector. You just take a pill and you're instantly asleep in 2 seconds without any kind of negative side effects. And I could just sell them to philosophy students. I would make millions, man.
Okay.
Because I know, I remember having those conversations with people of just, they're up at 3 a.m. thinking about this stupid bullshit. It was about a year ago now, I wrote an entire paper at, 3 in the morning, not for a class or anything, but just because I needed to get the shit out of my head about why analytic philosophy is stupid. I needed it out of there and somewhere else so that my brain would be okay with it. And so I just wrote a fucking paper at 3 in the morning, like a jackass, on fucking Notepad.
Well, I mean, that's why philosophy is useful, is it helps you deal with shit.
Yeah,
it helps you think clearer, because you can break down your arguments and make better ones because you understand logic.
Yeah, and it is in some ways a form of therapy, because it forces you to question your notions and why you hold them, and part of that is questioning your own experiences and what formed those opinions in your mind, which I guess we're kind of coming full circle now.
Yeah.
Because, you're too young to live authentically, hold on. Let me back up. You're too young to realize you're living authentically, and then slowly socializing and growing as a social being, you kind of have to lose that in order to function in society.
The process of socialization really, in our culture, strips you of that.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. It might have been Heidegger. I follow philosophy quotes on Twitter, so I get a lot of my people mixed up. But someone had the point of to rediscover the simplicity of a child at play. That is the goal of philosophy. Because kids just do shit. They don't have reasons for it.
I think it was Nietzsche. Like, I think the quote's something like true maturity is regaining the seriousness one had as a child at play.
Yeah, because I'm going to go fight a dragon now.
Yeah.
You don't have a reason for why you're going to fight a dragon. You don't have a reason for why you think there's a dragon in your backyard for you to fight, but you just go fucking do it. And so living authentically is getting back to that point of, just recognizing what you want in an instant, why you want that thing, and then deciding whether or not that's a good use of your time. And that's kind of branches into Freud there, too, with the whole idea of the id and ego and superego, which, while not psychologically sound, is a really good fucking metaphor.
Yeah. I mean, as far as, Freud's just kind of useful from the perspective of even just understanding aspects of behavior as just a result of impulses.
Yeah, I would always say that Freud isn't right scientifically speaking, but if you just use what he's talking about as a metaphor for, what your experiences are, what your emotional experiences are, it is a much better way to help people come to grips with whatever psychological ailment they might have. Don't take... There's not literally a reptile part of your brain called the id that is all impulse, but when you consider that those different parts of yourself that are impulsive and how they're struggling against your socialized self, it does kind of get interesting and helps you break things down and just more clearly understand it.
It's a simple, easy to understand working model of kind of your psychological life.
Exactly.
It's not true in any kind of absolute sense. It's just if you understand it that way, it can provide useful outcomes. If you understand, okay, if I can label this thing, okay, this is id. If I can put that label on it, I can understand the thing and get distance from the thing.
Yeah, it's kind of like going back to the whole Earth-centric universe thing, because that just from observation alone, that makes a lot of sense. You look at the sky at night, you look at the sky all day, the sun goes around, the moon goes around. From our perspective, they're revolving around the Earth, so it makes perfect sense to come to that conclusion just from, observation on its own, really basic observation. But the more you look into it, that doesn't turn out to be true, but it does. You are aware of certain truths within that. You are aware that there is rotation, that there are these bodies. Same with Freud. You can't cut open your brain and find this section is the id, this section is the ego, but it does help you understand those different parts of your personality and how they are interacting.
This has kind of come up a lot in certain Buddhist circles, more of the kind of practice-oriented people, because a lot of the push towards a more practice-oriented Buddhism is rooted in kind of pushing the old school maps and models, because there's a lot of taboo about talking about them, because there's a lot of taboo about talking about attainments. But really, I mean, if you want to compare the models of the progressive insight that are in the Vimudimagga as compared to the Visuddhimagga, which came later, or just even look at the links of dependent origination at different periods in time. As time goes on, we come up with more and more complex lists. It doesn't mean that the specific stages are actual real things and you attain to them. It's just simple ways of describing experiences which have similar qualities to help you navigate that territory.
Yeah, it's all metaphysics. That's seriously the best way to describe it at that point, though, is metaphysics, where it's not literally meant to be taken as fact that these things physically exist in the universe. This is a way to think about it in a physical sense that helps you to better understand it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
theories for operating in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And again, we keep coming back to philosophy is actually practical.
Who knew?
Yeah.
Just because it doesn't get us to the moon.
Well, then do we need to get into that discussion of, science is just sort of the bastard child of philosophy?
I've honestly considered doing a philosophy versus science video before, but my science guy just kind of disappeared off the face of the earth. Because Alec and I had that conversation one time, and it was a really fascinating thing. And like, I think he was operating from a misunderstanding of what philosophy is. And to be fair, philosophy had a bit of an identity crisis for a long time there, where everyone was kind of, arguing about like the way in which your brain works, and no one was bothering to look into actual science of it. So like, I certainly understand that perspective, but he was under the impression that philosophy is trying to answer scientific questions. I'm like, no, it's really not. It's trying to answer how to live with the way in which you experience things.
The scientific method is useful for gathering data about how the world is so we can make better decisions about how to live in that world.
Certainly.
That's why science is important.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just a tool.
Yeah, and like, what bothers me about hearing all these, science figures talk about philosophy is it's like when your friend gets drunk, and they just say some really stupid shit, and you're like, no, dude, you were so cool. Why are you like this, Stephen Hawking? Please stop. Who gave Stephen Hawking a beer?
Yeah. Well, and even we're starting to see some pushback by certain physicists on that, because like Sean Carroll was pretty good. He wrote a whole piece, it was a while back, and I can't remember exactly what the title was, but it was something to the effect of like, physicists need to stop saying stupid things about philosophy.
Yay.
It's like, yeah, no kidding. Because even the most like popular people, like Neil deGrasse Tyson, who's very, very popular, says the most bafflingly stupid shit. And I mean, I don't mean to use ableist language, but it's like, you see people sometimes, and they make arguments that if you wrote a paper arguing that in like a first year philosophy course, you would fail. And it boggles my mind sometimes how certain people are what's the term now, thought leaders.
Yeah. Did you ever read Dawkins' take on the ontological argument?
I don't think so.
Okay, like, alright, when Dawkins is insulting, creationist myth people, sure, that's fine. That's solely his prerogative, because at that point it is a biological argument. That's fine. But then when he got into theology is when shit started getting really, really bad. Because, like, he takes on the ontological argument, and for people that don't know, ontological argument, really basic. It sounds stupid, but the more you think about it, trust me, it actually starts to kind of make sense. God is the most perfect thing that could possibly exist. The most perfect thing that could possibly exist, by definition, has to exist, therefore God exists. That's like the kindergarten, stupid, talking way too fast version of the ontological argument. So Dawkins goes, well, in order for something to be great, then it has to overcome obstacles. The greatest possible obstacle we could imagine for a thing is to not exist. So, in order to be the greatest possible thing, God cannot exist. And that's really
bad.
Yes! It's oh my god. And so,
that's like that kid in your first year philosophy class who like thinks that he's smarter than he is, and then the prof like totally shuts them down.
Yeah, I had that kid.
Everybody, we all had that kid.
That's the kid that's like, oh man, I've talked about all this kind of stuff when I've gotten high with my friends before, so I'm gonna get an A.
Yeah, that one.
Yep. Yeah, it's shit like that. I'm just like, guys, that is literally a fallacy though of quoting an expert, I think it's called, or something like that. It's like you go to appeal to authority from an unreliable authority. So, like, you go, well, Dawkins is this accomplished scientist, so obviously he can talk about this thing. No, if he wants to make a biological argument for why an almighty being could not possibly exist, he could certainly do that. I don't know what he would possibly say, but he could certainly do that and be considered an expert. But once he steps into this other thing, he knows about as much as, first-year college student.
Well, and that was brilliant. You can look it up. Terry Eagleton, who's, I guess in certain circles, reasonably famous for being both a Marxist and a literary critic. And he's also a Christian socialist. And he wrote a review of one of Dawkins's books. I can't even remember which one it is. But he just fucking tears it to pieces and, is essentially like, Dawkins has no clue what the fuck he's talking about. He's just like, this is like mind-bogglingly bad. And it's like he sort of seems to equate all of Christianity with like the most literal belief. Like he takes, and that's sort of my problem with new atheists in general, is they take religious scripture more literally than most religious people.
Yeah, and like they argue against the morons and assume that's representative of the whole.
Yeah.
Like not everyone thinks.
Yeah, like anybody can argue against the Westboro Baptist Church. Like, it doesn't take a fucking genius to do that.
Yeah, at that point it's like you're, bad. This isn't the most PC thing I'm ever going to say, but at that point you're picking on the kid in the class with the helmet. You really are.
Down. And punching down is never, it's never classy. But it's not, they're not even, it always bugged me when people, like ages ago, because I don't associate with people like this anymore, but, people like send me links, it's like, oh yeah, it's this big debate between, like Dawkins or Sam Harris or somebody and like some big creationist, like, I don't give a fuck, like, I have better things to do. I know the world is not 6,000 years old. That's not even worth, entertaining the idea. And yeah, okay, like, we need to make arguments, and there are people who are brainwashed into creepy religious cults and whatnot, and that needs to be dealt with. But
you don't throw out religion on the whole as you do it.
Yeah. Well, and this whole idea that religion is the source of all of the problems and all of the violence, that's demonstrably false.
Mm-hmm. Like, people always find an excuse to kill each other. South Park is a show that I have a tremendous love for, and I do absolutely adore the episode, or the series of episodes where they go into the future, and Dawkins, like, apparently worked, and he was able to remove religion from the face of the earth, and it was different factions of atheists having like this gigantic war with each other over what atheists should call themselves. People will never run out of reasons to kill each other. Religion just happens to be a really good one some of the time.
I don't agree with that. I would kind of come back to materialism and say, look at who has the money and who's ordering who to kill whom.
And that's certainly fair. I'm just saying that, like, people will find an excuse to, like, violent people are going to find an excuse to commit violent action. So religion just happens to lend itself well with people because they're already invested in it. Religion just happens to, some religions, not all religions, allows itself, or is able to be manipulated. Just like anything. You can manipulate anything into working. That's why, you have new atheists getting more and more militant and fundamentalist as they go on. As that movement grows, they're getting more and more indistinguishable from the people that they're supposedly fighting against. And so, like, I don't think people, I don't think religion is any exception. I think people will always find something to grab onto to try to, spread hate and violence with.
Yeah, and I mean, as far as, I guess, trying to tie this back into existentialism, religious philosophies have always tried to deal with that. And you have all of the practice side of things of, this is a way to interpret your experience, and it was done in pre-scientific times.
Yeah.
And, we have more sophisticated ways of doing things. Granted, it's sort of... Religion's worth it, I suppose, in the sense of it really being about practical philosophy. And that, I mean, you look at the Western philosophical tradition, like, people get PhDs, but they're not religiously accomplished in the way that, Plato would have intended when he set up the academy.
Mm-hmm.
In my tradition, we would call that arhatship or awakening. You can pick whatever your tradition is, but people aren't coming out with that. Which I think is a valuable thing, understanding how your perception works and seeing through kind of the delusions of your own experience. Particularly if your intention is to do philosophy.
Yeah, I think we might end here, actually, unless you want to add something to this. But
no, that's as good of a place to wrap up, I think, as any. Is we're back to the realm of human experience again.
Yeah, just philosophy, existentialism in particular, demands an open mind, and so you can't go into a philosophical discussion or philosophical learning planning to be closed off and not accept any kind of argument. Like, that's one thing that annoys me, is you get those first-year philosophy students and you try to explain something to them and they go, well, I don't know if I'm going to agree with that premise. So you can't get anywhere because you're just trying to argue premises, and it's like, that's not how it works. You just got to accept the premise, and if you don't like it, you can, form an argument later.
It's just like, try this thought experiment for a minute.
Yeah, but they don't trust it. And to be fair, if someone kept tricking me with thought experiments, all Socratic style, I'd get kind of annoyed too.
Yeah.
And you get a little naturally suspicious. But no, so you can't go into it with like a completely closed off mind. You can be skeptical. It's always good to be skeptical. It's always good to be critical, but that's significantly different than being walled off from what someone is attempting to communicate to you. You can't go in with an agenda. You need to be able to at least be willing to hear someone out. So yeah, I think that's a pretty good place to end off the video. This is almost just a double topic, and that's kind of an inevitable. Talking about existentialism, you have to get into philosophy on the whole, and where it fits in within that. So, everyone, if you should so choose, please like this video. Please leave your comments on your own phenomenological experiences.
You're radically free to do so.
Yep, you are radically free to do so. What else? Please consider subscribing. I swear you're not forced to. There's no deterministic set of circumstances in which you have no choice but to subscribe. And yeah, that'll pretty much cover all my bases for random philosophy jokes in whoring out my video. Also, if you haven't, and I don't know why you wouldn't, but go subscribe to Superhero Enthusiast. He doesn't upload a ton of stuff, but when he does, it's always good.
Thank you.
Yeah, indeed. Everyone, thank you very much for listening. Until next time, I'm the philosopher.
I'm the enthusiast.
And he was enthusiastic about doing philosophy. And we're your geeky gentlemen, and we will be discussing things.